President Trump signed a $700 billion defense bill into law earlier this month, but those budget caps from 2011, which robbed the Pentagon of billions of dollars, remain on the books, and they're needed to rebuild the military. The chairman of the House Armed Services Committee blames both parties.
Most everybody agrees that we need to spend more on defense. But you've got Republicans who want to cut other parts of the budget. You've got Democrats that want to increase other parts of the budget. So everybody's trying to use the defense budget as leverage for these other things. I think that's wrong.
The approved short-term spending plan keeps the government and the military funded through January 19. But unless the budget caps are removed, roughly $100 billion will be taken away from the forces. President Trump's goal of rebuilding the military will be in jeopardy. Late last week, the Senate Majority Leader said defense cuts in recent years are too much.
Defense has actually been hit harder under the Budget Control Act than domestic programs have. And I think there's an urgency there.
Congressional aides tell me while these budget caps will be amended in some form next month, they're likely not to be repealed entirely. Ed?
Well, Lucas, we had a segment a little earlier about the threat from North Korea, the threat from Iran. There are obviously always threats around the world, but there are a lot right now heading into 2018. What kind of impact could there be to the U.S. military when you talk about the potential cuts?
Well, Ed, here are just a few examples. The head of Army Aviation recently told Congress that his pilots are flying at fewer flight hours than any time in the past 30 years. 70% of Marine Corps jets and helicopters can't fly right now. And out of the 542 U.S. Navy Super Hornet jets, half of them are grounded right now, awaiting repairs. According to the head of Naval Aviation, only 31% are even fully mission capable. When the Navy deployed 3 aircraft carriers this year, some which went off the Korean Peninsula, planes had to be taken from training squadrons, robbing young pilots of critical flight time. Now, the Air Force is also impacted. The head of the Air Force says her service is up to 2,000 pilots short, and only half of its fleet of B-1 and B-2 bombers can fly. Now, in the Marine Corps, only 37% of its heavy-lift helicopters can fly, and that's not counting its 60 helicopters missing on the flight line. Earlier this month, the head of the Marine Corps spoke to Jennifer Griffin at the Reagan National Defense Forum at the Reagan Library outside Los Angeles about the shortage of aircraft hurting training.
If you don't have enough airplanes, you don't have all the airplanes, you're flying a smaller number of airplanes. You fly a smaller number of airplanes, those airplanes break more frequently. And then if you can't get the part support you pay for the readiness, then you have a smaller number of airplanes. And so you're not getting the hours. Last year in aviation, we had a horrible safety year, probably the worst year in about 10 years.
Twice as many U.S. troops were killed this year in non-combat aviation crashes than last year. And many lawmakers on Capitol Hill say these budget cuts are to blame. Ed?
And Lucas, when you talk about, you had that one graphic saying that 50% of Navy jets can't fly. That doesn't sound to me like something that can be fixed in a year or two. What are the estimates in terms of how long it's going to take the U.S. military to rebuild?
That's right, Ed. Remember, these budget caps, known as sequestration, took effect in 2011, which took about 20% out of the defense budget away. It took years for the military to get in this hole. It's going to take years to get out. It takes years to manufacture aircraft. These companies can only make so many jets a year. In some cases, these jets are so old that companies that make the parts aren't even around anymore, which have forced some airmen to go to the desert scrap heap called the Boneyard to scrounge for parts for their aircraft.